Welcome to Pathways to Stillness. I'm Dr. Gary Irwin-Kenyon, a gerontologist and Tai Chi instructor. On this show, my co-host Vicki Hogarth and I explore how the practice of stillness can transform the way we see aging, death, and loss, and how it can help us understand our lives as a story.
I'm so excited to be sitting down with you again. Gary, this is our 5th episode. Can you believe it?
Already,
and feedback has been absolutely incredible, very powerful. I really feel like this show is coming at a time when we can all use it. And I think the exercises you've been providing for people at home to do and follow along has been really impactful.
Yes, it certainly is a time where it's pretty difficult, pretty hard to avoid some of the news that's happening to us all these days. Yes, the exercise from last week, I'll just read it over again.
Yeah, and I think I'd love to preface it by saying it was an exercise that challenged people to share deeply some of their most personal life moments, and the response was overwhelming and quite powerful. So we'll share some of those after, but please do read the exercise.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful. Think about experiences in your life that you can say you survived. It may not be a big thing to others, but for you it may be a source of meaning and stillness. For example, some participants in my guided autobiography groups start out by saying that they really do not have much of a life story to tell, since they were, for example, just a housewife. That is, until they looked more closely. After reviewing her experiences, raising 4 children, schooling, illness, activities, managing a household, and being a wife to her husband, one participant said that she did not know how she did it. She said that although science tells us that we cannot do 2 things at once, mothers indeed do this. By relaxing into stillness and gently exploring your journey, you may find such unique meaning, value, and stillness associated with that discovery.
The responses had me in tears in a very beautiful way, and I think what I really didn't realize this show would do was create such a huge bonding experience for our community. And through learning about some people I know just on Facebook, some people that wrote in I've never met before, some are people I know from the community, and to learn these things about them and that they're so willing to share really deepened my sense of who we are as a community, and in so many ways gives you more empathy and a sense of belonging, that you know each other so much more than you did prior to hearing these things. And I wanted to read a few that just really stood out. One from Tim said, "I quit doing cocaine, crack, LSD, prescription pills, and drinking over a decade ago, all at the same time. He looks back on it, it's the best decision he ever made. He got out just when he saw meth hitting the streets and developed a sense of community through service." And it's, to take that, especially I think with addiction, when we think of that rock bottom, to take that moment and it's become the building block for who he's become was just so powerful. And we've had others similar to that one as well. A woman named Giselle wrote in to say how she got her GED at age 36. Between the ages of 38 and 42, she went to UNB St. John. At 42, she got her bachelor's degree in nursing and turned her life around that way. I'm just going to read a few that really stood out because I want to make the most of the time we had here today. Jamie wrote in to say he survived a stroke 26 years ago. It took 6 years to learn to play hockey again, but he's thankful for that experience every day, and he had the best physiotherapist and daughter and son-in-law around. I love you, he says. So interesting how some of these moments that maybe we think of as the darkest moments of our lives, if we can learn to sit with them in stillness, can be a building block for even a better version of ourselves. Yeah, the responses were incredible. I'm sure that we will hear more throughout the show. I will draw on more, but I wanted to let you take the lead now on what we're going to talk about today.
Okay, those are wonderful responses, just heartfelt, and people have to be a little courageous to share some of those experiences. And that's really wonderful, for, like you say, for all of us. It creates a sensitivity to each other's problems or survive, or things we've succeeded or managed to find meaning in that didn't start out very nice. I want to talk about, in Buddhism they call this the second arrow story. And the first arrow is something negative or bad happens to us. And our first thing that happens is our doing brain kicks in, our sympathetic nervous system, which is about survival and avoidance and fear. And these are a set of questions that I bet many of the audience and myself recognize when something not so nice happens to you. And so the first arrow is that something's happened to you. And you may ask, why me? That's one question. Why do I feel this way? Why can't I do something to fix this, to control? What did I do to deserve this? And what is going to happen to me? So those are questions. Now, we may not find an answer to that, but those questions are really the second arrow, which means that something's happened, and then the story we tell about that, which is based on these questions, is creating another level of suffering. That's what they mean by that it creates another level of suffering. So, however, those questions, I think for most of us, inevitably come up, especially when something doesn't change for the better in a fairly short period of time. So what else can we do about that? We can move to the being brain, which is about approaching, healing, kindness, compassion. So we have another, say, tool in our tool chest to deal with things that have happened that are not very nice. But how do we do that? Well, we need to go to a stillness practice, and we've been talking about the fact that there are many different kinds of stillness practices for different strokes for different folks. We were talking before we came on that the simplest one, but perhaps the hardest one for many people, is sitting still, doing nothing.
Very guilty.
That's one of my colleagues called it cross-legged immobility. Personally, I've never been able to do the cross-legged thing, but to be able to just sit quietly. But other kinds of approaches to that, the basic idea is to try to be with your suffering, rather than trying to avoid it or fix it or solve it, just to be with it and see what happens. Try it. Now maybe it's probably a blend of going back to the doing and trying to embrace the being, but that's another way of doing things, and that's what a lot of what we're talking about from my book is in all these different situations, whether it's illness or relationship stuff or financial stuff, personal, spiritual crises, whatever it happens to be, we do have another possibility, which is to be with it. And to be with it means to have a stillness practice that you go to kind of as a refuge, a place to be calm or quiet or supported, a refuge to be. And then once you're relaxed, we talk about it here as relax into stillness movements. Once you're relaxed, to try to see what else can I do about that situation. I'm contradicting myself. I don't mean do,
yes,
but be with it and be open to what can possibly happen. There's a psychologist by the name of Kristen Neff, and her specialty is compassion. And I'd highly recommend her on YouTube to talk about her stuff. But she talks about 3 steps in this process. First of all, why you? Well, this is hard. You can acknowledge that this is really hard. And then the second step would be, I'm not the only one who's ever suffered. And the third one is about giving yourself compassion, being compassionate and kind towards yourself like you would a good friend. I mean, there are those who say suffering is the human way. Suffering is the path to, as Ram Dass would say, to go home, to be free, to be loving awareness. In the end, that's what we're said to be, loving awareness. We never die. We're not really born. We just are that. So that's kind of going from one end of it to the other, to the awful and terrible stuff about suffering, to what it may be its purpose for us human beings. Now, I wouldn't want to say this to the wrong person at the wrong time, right? Because when we are really in it, it's pretty hard to take that sort of advice.
But I will say that putting that into practice, just from your exercise from last week, and to see the responses that we got, which really, a lot of them deeply rooted in suffering and in loss, to read all those bonded me to those people more than anything else they could have shared, and showed me a part of their soul in a way that I think sometimes suffering only can. And also how it opens us up to being empathetic. When we suffer, it connects us to everyone.
Right. It's true. It's healing for ourselves, but it's also healing for everyone around us. And I totally agree with you. The nasty, the wrong roads taken, the confusion, the pain, all of those experiences, when I look back at life, they have really, they've sort of upgraded my level of stillness, first of all, and my respect for stillness practice. And as you say, that empathy and compassion for other people, you can pretty well assume these days, I think, that everybody's in it. At one level or another, one of the perspectives or not of the not so nice things happening in the world, you can almost assume everybody's to some degree or another preoccupied. You just hope you can help yourself and others to create a space for stillness or spaciousness, to look at things and get some help as well as dealing with it.
That's it, because it is detrimental if you're stuck in that first arrow and that why me, to not work through it.
Right.
So how do we get to the second arrow? How do we embrace what has happened and learn to work our way out of it?
Well, we need to shift to our being, nature of our being, as I mentioned. So how can we do that? And one of the practical ways, again, what I talk a lot about in the book, is your life as a story. So what does that mean? I'd like to give a little bit of this is not a university lecture, thank God, but just a little bit of background to the way I approach this. And I have to give a shout out to my good friend and colleague, Dr. Bill Randall, WilliamLRandall.com, and he has written a lot as well about life as a story. And he and I created a bit of a subfield in gerontology called narrative gerontology. What's that about? It's about, you could say, instead of biological aging, of which there's a lot of work done, that's the main paradigm, I guess you'd say, theory that's talked about, we talk about biographical aging. So it means basically that our lives, we are stories. So one of the first things here is we say we have a life story, but we would say we are stories, which means that how we think, how we feel, how we go about the world, and how we look at ourselves, you'll find a story in there. So and when we do workshops and that sort of thing, we look at what are the parts of a story that you could then apply to your life. Well, you have themes. I have a theme about my marriage, my job, my family, my hobby. Those are all themes. There's plots, there's action. Relationships give you a lot of action usually. Different kinds of relationships will give you good and, nice and not so nice, but plots. So you have action characters. So we would say, I'm a character in my own story. You're a character in my story. You're a character in your own story. And just one other one, editing. Since I'm my own story, I can edit it. And you can edit mine and I can edit yours. So that's the kind of basis of how you might look at this, work your way through this second arrow, is by saying, well, maybe there's other questions I can ask, or or other ways of looking at what's just happened, or things that have happened way back when in life, where what happened, but the meaning can be changed in the present. Now, it's not, I don't want to give the impression that I just, pay an expert, pay a PhD and change my story. It's not always easy to change your story. It takes takes time, it takes a process, because you're trying to change emotions and behavior and thoughts. So it's a little bit more than straightforward behavior therapy, for example.
Right. Or maybe just the perspective. Like if you look at it, maybe you look at something as something that was holding you back, but if you look at it as maybe a challenge that made you stronger, then the narrative arc of your life story could drastically change, even if the events seem the same. Right.
So you can so this magic word is re-story. Not restore, but re-story. So it means you can possibly change the story. Your journey is open to a different future, different present and a different future.
That's right. Since you're still writing your life story, that could have a drastic. Have you seen that in people you've talked to, that when they're able to put this practice into their own lives, that they can ultimately feel like they're at the reins of their life again and taking it in a direction that they're happier with?
Oh yes, there are. We call it restoring, or sometimes radical restoring. People, some of those examples, people come through something that was pretty awful, and they find new meaning, hopefully stillness, and so that's another aspect of this, that by listening to people, we used to call it storytelling and story listening. We have a whole bunch of terminology here, but which might come up as we go through different episodes.
Well, I give you an example of when I was telling you about losing my hair and calling my friend and said, "Why me?" I moved home to New Brunswick at the time. I was in Toronto, had a big TV project on the way. I was doing some what I felt was very important work. It was the next place I wanted to be in my career. Mm-hmm. And then I got an infection and lost half my hair, and it was to do television in Toronto at the time like that, it just wasn't going to work. And I was very depressed, and I decided to come home here. And for a while, I really wallowed in that and couldn't move past it, and couldn't work my way through it or give positive meaning to it. And I wanted to feel sorry for myself. And when she said, "Why not you?" She said, "I know you're a bigger person than this, and I know that maybe if anyone could get through this, it's you. But if you're going to be stubborn, you're not going to." Mm-hmm. And but it took a lot of willpower to finally see it as maybe there's a silver lining. And I ended up getting involved here. And to me, this is the most meaningful chapter. But had I not been able to work through it, I think I'd still be wallowing in, I don't know, depression. I don't know where I would be if I hadn't been able to say, okay, this is something I too can overcome and find a new path.
Yeah. Sometimes that's a wonderful story. Sometimes it's quite unpredictable too. Like one of my guided autobiography courses, this gentleman was probably 50 in the course, and he wasn't participating. You were asked to, you were invited to tell parts of your story, to go home and write parts of your story, and then come back in and share it with a small group. So he was just very silent and just didn't seem happy at all. And then one day he came in and he was lit up. He was just, so happy. And I said, "Well, can I ask you, if you don't mind me asking you?" I said, "What's going on here?" I'm curious. And he said, well, you know what? Throughout this whole course, and for a long time, I realized I'd been grieving the death of my grandfather. I was very, very close to him, and I've been dealing with this for a long time. And he said, I wrote down one of the family issues last night, and it was there, and it just let go.
Wow.
So sometimes this restorying can happen in very simple terms. Other times, maybe it needs more work or outside help, you know, professional help. But a lot of times, getting yourself relaxed a bit and maybe having a little peace or stillness and then just embracing your story might give you, or listening to somebody else, might help you to get through it. And this idea of themes and characters and plot, it's something that can get in your head, and then you see, every time you're talking to somebody, you think, okay, I'm listening for themes, I'm listening. And it can really help you understand, and we call, another term we use is narrative care. So if you can listen to somebody's story along the lines of all these character themes, plot, you may be able to understand them, but then help them more easily.
Wow. Is it hard for some people to see themselves not just as a character, but when they realize that they're also the narrator, the author?
Yeah.
Is there a breakthrough moment with some people where they sort of see that even in those moments, maybe the circumstances are beyond your control, but you're still a storyteller?
Yeah, I think probably after that first arrow, you know, when you're hit, and at the beginning of a nasty process or things that happen to you, you can't really see this as a story, right? It's too close. So you're just living it or surviving it. But once that eases off a little bit, then you're right, you become well, I'm telling my story to myself or to other people. So then you're able to, once you get that bit of distance, and can be helped with the different things we're talking about. And sometimes it doesn't. It's not a magic pill. That part has to be mentioned too.
Sometimes those uninvited plot twists, for sure, they can take time. They can take time.
Yeah.
What's your best advice for people, though, to getting through to that place where you can rest with whatever heaviness it is? Maybe it's the diagnosis of a terminal illness, something that is so hard to really accept.
Yeah. I think, well, the first part in the doing part is to, you know, find out what's happening, educate yourself in any of these kind of losses, educate yourself as to what's happening. But then if you can, it's to find a place of peace somewhere inside yourself by perhaps these compassion work or other kinds of, any kind of stillness practice, which could be a setting, a place, a person, a pet, you know, anywhere where you feel like you get some eases the pain and starts to give a little bit of a space between you and what's happening to you.
I can't believe how fast the time on this show goes by. I find it the most therapeutic time of my week. What are we going to do for next week for exercises for our viewers at home?
Well, I thought we could do this one here. Just give me 1 second.
And I should mention while you're looking that your book, Pathways to Stillness, is available online through Indigo, through your website, and Amazon as well. And I do feel so blessed that Dr. Gary Irwin-Kenyon is part of the St. Andrews community as well. So I'm sure that you get lots of questions when people run into you on the street, but it's amazing to have someone of your intellect on this subject right here in our community.
Well, thank you very much. And you're wonderful people, as we know, in St. Andrews. So this is an exercise you might want to try. Is there a change occurring in your life to which you might apply these restorying insights? So the idea of trying to look at your life as it is with characters, plots, and challenges, and being the editor of being open to looking at your own story. Give yourself permission to relax into stillness in whatever way you can. some of the exercises, Tai Chi exercises we do here, that alone can help. Permission to relax into stillness, let go, and allow the change to become one part of your pathway and of who you are. So that the idea that this issue is only a part of who you are, it's not all of who you are.
I love it. Well, should we end with the Tai Chi exercise as we have become accustomed to do? Even
Sure.
if it's a repeat, I think it still works.
Yeah, well, that's a good point about Tai Chi, that they don't need to be 500 moves. You can just do a few, but you keep deepening your feeling in the movement. So why don't we do the wave again?
Okay.
So with the palms turned out, relax your shoulders. Take a breath up, about shoulder height, turn over, float back down, just like you're swimming in the bay. Down. Do it a few times. Stop, breathe. Over, float down. Breathe in. Try to gently coordinate your breath if you can. In coming up, out going down. Yeah.
And you are teaching again. Let people know at home if they want to come to one of your Tai Chi courses. You're teaching one right now.
Yes, thank you. Actually, the town has sponsored, is sponsoring a Tai Chi class. It's free of charge to come, participants. Seated Tai Chi, so you're sitting down, but you don't have to have any experience in Tai Chi. And that's on Monday mornings at 10 o'clock at the Youth-Senior Center here in St. Andrews.
Okay, so right near us here. So maybe
Right
you'll come
next
join
door.
me right after.
Right,
Well,
right.
thank you again, Gary. It's been a pleasure as always.
Thanks, Vicki. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in to this episode of Pathways to Stillness, and look forward to seeing you at the next one.